Forum at the Institute of Politics. My name is Sierra Pape, and I'm a freshman at the college studying social studies, and I'm a member of the JFK Forum Committee. Before we begin, please take a moment to notice the exit doors on the Park side and JFK Street side. In case of an emergency, please exit out of the door closest to you. Also, please take a moment now to silence all cell phones. And join me in welcoming Harvard undergraduate Mateen Zarafaranian.
Good evening, and welcome to the John F. Kennedy Jr. Forum at the Institute of Politics. My name is Mateen Zarafaranian. I'm a first year here at the college studying government and economics, and I'm also a member of the JFK Jr. Forum Committee. Tonight, we have the pleasure of welcoming Dana Bash to the forum. One of the most decorated political journalists in the United States, Dana serves as CNN's chief political correspondent and the host of the network's flagship programs, Inside Politics and State of the Union. Over more than 2 decades at CNN, she has covered the stories and moments that have shaped American politics, bringing clarity and insight to complex national conversations. In 2024, she served as co-moderator for CNN's presidential debate, which drew over 50 million viewers nationwide and was the highest-rated program in the network's history. Her distinguished reporting has earned her numerous honors, including the Saul Tayshoff Award for Excellence in Broadcast Journalism and 3 Everett McKinsley-Dirksen Awards for Distinguished Reporting of Congress from the National Press Foundation. Moderating tonight's conversation is Nancy Gibbs, director of the Shorenstein Center and the Edward R. Murrow Professor of the Practice of Press, Politics, and Public Policy at the Harvard Kennedy School. Before joining Harvard, Professor Gibbs spent more than 30 years at Time magazine, where she serves as its first female editor-in-chief. She has co-authored 2 New York Times bestsellers, The President's Club and The Preacher and the Presidents, and remains one of the most respected voices on the intersection of media and politics. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Dana Bash and Nancy Gibbs.
Patient. Thank you so much for making...
Sorry, everyone. Logan has 1 runway. That's working, so apologize.
We're familiar. We are in such a supersized news cycle that I never, when I get to talk to someone like you, I never quite know where to begin, so I default to the news. And about an hour ago, I got the alert that the entire East Wing of the White House is going to be demolished. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to know how that, someone who has spent so much time in that building, mm-hmm. and what it means. How do you react to that?
Well, you know, it's, first of all, hi, it's good to be here. Nice to see you. How do I react to that? It's really interesting because of the volume of news that is so impactful on people's lives, on the Constitution, on the separation of powers, and the president very aggressively, openly pushing the bounds in every way that he can. But for some reason, this feels like it is breaking through. Well, not for some reason. This is breaking through because as much as we use words or our voice, we know, and you know as somebody who spent a lot of time with the power of imagery on the front page of your magazine, it's the imagery and the pictures that seem to be really breaking through here. And I'm not using construction metaphors intentionally, but it really is. I mean, it's remarkable how jarring it is for people to see that and for it to kind of be a digestible example of the way that the president is just changing things in Washington, changing things in the White House, changing things in the executive and making them, and in this particular case, the edifice, which is what he cares so much about. It's how he, came up. He's a construction guy at heart. How he wants it to be. And look, I spent time in the White House press pool where it was built over an actual pool.
Have you signed the pipes in the sub-basement?
Yes, exactly. You probably did too. So there have been changes to the White House. Harry Truman built the Truman balcony. This is definitely different. They're not adding on or sort of changing the inside. He's completely changing an entire wing of the White House, and he wants to make sure that we never forget him, and this is one way.
So you say it's jarring to see that. How do you process the fact that arguably there's a large portion, impossible to assess size, who watch the symbolism of that as well as the literal wrecking ball, and it's like, great, that's what I voted for.
A lot.
So how does that, I mean, I start with the White House because obviously, ultimately it's just a building, and at a time when the conversation is about either, warfare or health premiums or SNAP benefits ending, like there are a lot of things that affect people much more immediately. But there is something about that as a symbolism of, is this something to celebrate, something to deplore, something to...
It's all of it. I mean, it's the classic Trump Rorschach test. If you love him and love what he says he's going to do, then you're like, yeah, knock it down and put up whatever you want, Mr. President. And if you don't, you say, what are you doing? But yeah, I mean, it's almost too, the idea that he is a disruptor who wants to take a wrecking ball to Washington, the fact that he is physically doing it is almost too much. Like if somebody were to write this, whether it's an SNL skit or like a scripted something, people would be like, okay, no, come on. It's a little too on the nose.
So how do you think about talking to across all those audiences, those who watch it, and it's a gut punch, those who watch it, and how do you, as a journalist, think about those conversations?
Exactly how we're having this conversation. Because, I try to unpeel the facts. I mean, there's obviously the history, and the history of the East Wing, of the White House compound, the whole entire campus of the White House, and how it is and how it feels and how it has felt to be there as a reporter, but also just as somebody who is interested in history, but then also looking at it with clear eyes that, as you just said, like, okay, it's just a building, and the building will be different, but the history will still exist. And I think that keeping our eye on the ball about what is happening beyond the actual physical building, but what the building represents is the most important thing, I think.
So how are you doing, when you have, on any given day, like how do you and your team and the reporters and the producers that you're talking to, what is it like to make the news judgment decisions now when we are dealing with these enormous stories that would have been weeks and weeks and weeks of block coverage before?
Well, we got practice in Trump 1. We did. But when you think about it, going back to the first administration, a lot of the stories that we were covering were about, because everybody was still in shock, including Donald Trump, by the way, that he won. So he was getting his sea legs. Now he's got them. Not only did he spend 4 years in the White House, he spent 4 years, maybe most importantly, out of the White House with people plotting, strategizing about how it would be when he got back in. And now he's there and he knows how to work the levers of government, or what levers don't matter, and where he can just steamroll over. So the answer to your question is, we were a little rusty because
I was thinking he was very prepared for this.
He was very prepared, but just in terms of how to answer your question about how we respond or how we navigate it, we were rusty because Joe Biden worked at like the opposite speed, and the people in his White House, which is very, very different. But it is really, like, I do a program daily at noon Eastern, and by the time we get to air at noon, we have changed things most days, many, many times. And then while we are on the air, we change things. Sometimes it's because the president is having an event, because he has an event like every single day with a world leader, opens it up to questions, talks constantly, just floods the zone with comments and with never mind what he does on social media. And so we just have to be ready. And the hard thing is trying to be intentional and not bounce from one thing to the next and say, like, okay, this is a big deal, whatever the this is, and we're going to try to explain it. Like today, we did something that I had been wanting to do for a long time, and we found a 6-minute window in our show to do it, which is how high electricity bills are playing on the campaign trail, which is like something that really matters. Especially, there's elections for the governor's mansion in New Jersey, and you all know this, in New Jersey and Virginia, now in 2 weeks. And how that's playing out is fascinating because it's the affordability question that hurt Joe Biden the most in 2024 that is still very much out there, and in a way that is, groceries are personal. That's still a very expensive part of people's lives, but the fact that these energy costs are high is really, really important. So maybe we got lucky today that there wasn't huge news during our show today that we could do it, but trying to save a little bit of time for those stories that we want to do because we think are important as much as we can.
It's funny because that is a really valuable, explanatory story. What is it that contributes to energy prices? How does the regulation of utilities work? What's the role of data centers?
The data centers we were talking about, right?
But there's always been sort of a hierarchy that it's the scoopy stories, it's the investigative breakthroughs that are the sexy stories. And the explanatory work often takes a backseat to that.
Correct.
Even though there's just endless evidence that that's what people find they need, it's relevant, it's useful. You would think it is if you're trying to keep your audience watching, that would have
it's both.
Would be more central to
it's both and honestly it's that kind of stuff is important, but it's also whatever the leading edge of the news is that moment. Also today, during the show, the North Carolina legislature finalized the mid-decade gerrymander of the map, so they're going to get one more seat. We covered it yesterday, and so we, threw out one of the segments we were going to do on a couple of different political things, like John Sununu formally announcing he was going to run for Senate again, and a few other issues, and we just kind of went for that. And so, you do have to stay on the leading edge of the news, but I think what you're trying to get at with your question is really important, is what we think about 24/7, which is the definition of that news in this environment. What is it?
Well, so one of the cliches about coverage is if it bleeds, it leads.
Right.
And so I wondered how you were thinking going into last weekend's protests. We knew there was going to be another round of No Kings protests. There were predictions that they might be very big. There also is a pattern that if they're not violent, that they're not news. Or if it isn't 7 million people descending on Washington, if they're scattered all across the country, it's not news, even though arguably that many people in that many different places who have that little in common turning out tells you something even more important. So I'm wondering how you navigate the issues of what's interesting, what's visual, what's important, what's surprising.
Yeah, I mean, it was very visual. So I also have a co-anchor State of the Union, which is our Sunday morning show, and I anchored this past Sunday. So we were watching the protests on Saturday to see what was happening, and this was a little bit kind of inverted because Republicans were so, were setting expectations.
It was narrative warfare.
It was narrative warfare, but they were also, I don't know, I would argue that they made a strategic mistake because they were like, Antifa and Hamas and all of these things that they were saying that the Democrats were. And then by the time we got to Sunday morning, it was, oh, they're granola eating, NPR listening, grandmas and Birkenstocks. And so going back to the warnings that we heard from the Speaker of the House, like every day unsolicited, and other Republicans, because that didn't happen, we were watching, and what we saw was a sea from coast to coast of peaceful protests. I mean, with a few exceptions, but very few. And that was news. And it would have been news because of the fact there were so many people and because of the fact that it was visual, regardless. But I think that Republicans ended up setting themselves up for this becoming a bigger news event than maybe it even would have been because their predictions didn't happen. And I would argue in the narrative warfare, they lost.
The other big news story of the last 48 hours affects you very directly, with the announcement that the parent company of CNN is up for sale, potentially, which is just the latest gale force wind hitting.
Remember when we were related?
Under the same corporate umbrella?
Time and CNN. I guess we still, no, we're not anymore.
Not anymore?
No. I can't keep track.
But CBS absorbed by Skydance, Disney rattled by the Kimmel threats, the New York Times being sued again for $15 billion. That suit has come back. TikTok transferred at a bargain price. And now the Ellisons also circling CNN. Does that affect those forces and realities on the horizon trickle down into the newsroom? Is there an awareness? How does that, or does it affect the way you and your colleagues are thinking about what lies ahead?
I think it affects, look, we're all like literally in the news business, so we know what's going on. I think it affects how we feel, but not what we do, and not how we approach the news. Because I honestly would argue that if you worked at a widget making company and you read in the newspaper that your widget making company might be on the chopping block or might be bought by a bigger widget making company or a different kind of widget making company, you would feel a little anxious. And so you can transfer that to a big media company and to journalists. On top of that, of course, is the notion of what are we doing and what are we covering? I mean, I make a point to tune it out, and I do think that most of my colleagues do as well. And by it, I mean the noise around, the lawsuits that you're talking about and other things like that. But just as a human being and as an employee of the company, the uncertainty is real.
Do you feel more concern, and since journalists all talk to each other, at the traditional church-state barriers starting to really erode in terms of how much owners of companies are reaching directly into the direction of coverage? Or is that an overblown
I think
fear,
it's
and that
overblown.
journalists
Honestly,
are too
I
ornery
really think it's overblown. Just I can only speak from my experience. There is no crossing the line of church and state in my experience. Nobody is reaching down and saying, oh, you better not do this because if you do, Donald Trump X or whatever Y. I mean, I never, ever, ever hear that, ever. Now, I will say that it's always important for us as journalists to be buttoned up in sourcing and to be cautious in how we say things. And if this is a reminder of that, which should be how we operate regardless of who the president is? Okay.
Well, speaking of sourcing and being buttoned up, what do you see happening to Pentagon coverage?
Oh, gosh.
So we saw
So heartbreaking.
almost every newsroom pick up, move out.
Yeah.
Although a number of new news organizations were credentialed today as part of the new Pentagon press corps. I used to have White House correspondents say that the best thing that can happen to you is to be kicked out of the press room. Just frees up time that you're not in briefings to actually go report the news. Is it possible to genuinely do the necessary accountability reporting from the outside? Is it possible there might be advantages to it? How do you think about it?
I think now I will say I never covered the Pentagon full time, so I don't have firsthand experience in doing that. But one of the benefits of covering the Pentagon until a couple of weeks ago used to be the same benefit that I had covering Capitol Hill for a long time, which is that you can walk the halls. And when you're covering the White House, you cannot walk the halls because there aren't that many halls. So you're like in the press room, and this is what you're referring to, and you can go up to the lower press office and maybe to the upper press office, which is like down the hall from the Oval Office, and that's it. Anywhere else, you need an escort or an appointment. On Capitol Hill, you can go like almost anywhere, and you can talk to any member of Congress as long as you have a press pass. And that used to be the case for the Pentagon, and which is why it was such a fantastic place to cover, especially since there were so many sources, so many different people to talk to. The experience so far, since most of the press left, by the way, including, of course, Fox and Newsmax, some conservative outlets refused to sign the ridiculous contract or whatever it was that they were offering. My colleagues who cover the Pentagon have still been able to break news. So maybe that's the answer to your question.
Not to, be a downer, but
wait, because this has been so
so upbeat.
So upbeat.
But we're trying to find a path forward.
Okay.
CNN's audience, the last week for which I have numbers,
Oh boy.
averaged 459,000 total primetime viewers, 66,000 in the key 25 to 54 demographic, which is
not good.
down like 40% year over year.
Yeah.
This is not unique to CNN.
No.
How do you understand where audiences are going? What is driving that? Is that reversible? How do you think about
Well, let me ask, can I ask a question? Raise your hand if you have cable. You don't count. 1, 2.
Yeah,
Three?
I asked my students how many watch like any linear broadcast or cable
Or just
TV.
even like,
Not a
I'm
single.
just even talking about cord cutters here. Most of you are cord cutters. You get your television through streaming, YouTube, TV, or whatever. Okay, so therein lies the biggest problem with what has been our really profitable business model since 1980 when Ted Turner started it, which is that we have been part of basic cable, part of the way that most people have gotten their television. And most of our profits have come from cable subscriptions. Right. Advertising is good and it's very helpful, but most of it has come from cable subscriptions. So the numbers that you're talking about, a big challenge that we have is that it's the cord cutters. Now, I'm not here to say that, the same people who are cord cutting, Fox is still doing very well. They just are. We're doing better than MSNBC. But it's all going like this because of the technology changing. CNN, starting, I guess next week, the 27th, whenever that is launching our CNN streaming, our digital product, which for the first time is going to include most of the linear television network on the app with a subscription. I'm not sure how much it's going to cost, but it's going to be a lot less than Netflix. And so you have your subscription, and you're going to be able to watch all of our shows, minus like a few just because of the cable contracts, but most of the shows, I should say, not all of the shows. And in addition to that, you're going to have the capability to watch live feeds from the White House or whatever thing is happening, campaign trail, and different other offerings in addition to all of our text pieces as well. So the hope is that we will start to turn the numbers around because of the technology change, that people are not watching cable, by meeting viewers or meeting the audience where they are, which is on streaming and on their phone and on their apps.
Do you also think about that there's a kind of content that where this audience is growing that is obviously the content of creators, of a lot of podcasters and YouTubers who are in what my social science colleagues will call a parasocial relationship with their audiences. That's a different way of communicating. It isn't just what platform you're on.
You're so right, and that's
how you're communicating. So how do you think about that?
We got to do it all, because there still is an appetite, maybe not most of the age group here, but hopefully there is, but there still is an appetite for the linear product. But we have to do both, and we are doing both. I do vertical videos. I do, shorter pieces that we do video on demand, and we're going to do more of that with the streaming launch and with the app launch. So that's the answer. We got to do it all.
Because it feels from the outside that there has been maybe inevitable tension between creators who were welcomed into the Republican and Democratic national conventions, are now in the briefing room, that, I mean, it's a cliche between old media and new media, but these are two very different sort of species of journalists or people who are performing the role of journalism. How do you see that conflict?
Well, that's a different, I would argue that's a different question, because there are, you can be a creator and you can be a creator and a objective journalist at the same time. You can be a creator and a conservative journalist. I don't even know what I would call a conservative infotainer and a liberal infotainer. So there are all, and it is all blurred. My hope, and maybe this is totally naive, is that with all of this coming at people, that the individual journalists and the brands of journalism that are trusted, or at least are familiar, that if we can come to the space where people are watching on their phones or on streaming, then we can break through with that trust and with the sourcing, with the storytelling, and with the familiarity that existed before. It is totally different, you're right, than the Joe Rogans or pick your podcaster.
I mean, it almost feels that the anchor in the studio, the set and the lighting, is at a disadvantage in building a relationship with an audience compared to the overused authenticity.
Yeah, no, you're
the
totally
dynamic
right.
with creators. And what fascinates me is anyone who has a podcast or a Substack or is a YouTuber is probably relying on newsrooms who are still in the briefing rooms, filing FOIA requests, going into war zones to gather information. Like the fact gathering is still a foundation on which layer upon layer of independent media gets built. But the revenue and the audience, the attention, is all moving towards the independent media. So what does that mean for
Well, I think
mainstream newsrooms.
Well, it is attention. You're exactly right. But I don't want to confuse the newsroom and the news gathering and the FOIA requests and having your sources locked up and all of that stuff with how you getting the information versus how you package it. Because getting the information is still the most important thing, and doing it right and doing it objectively and doing it accurately. Most important thing. But you are right that as the years go on, having the beautiful lights in my studio, sitting around and reporting, or talking to a reporter out in the field, or sitting with reporters as I do on Inside Politics, there is still an appetite for that, but it's definitely changing, and I think that young people like it a little. Young people are used to watching things a little bit more raw, a lot more raw,
Well, it
and
feels
less
like
polished.
we're about an hour away from cable TV being podcasts that are.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll see how it goes with us being, with the linear product being on the app. Nobody knows, because there's no data. We just don't know how it's going to go. So I'll come back in a few months and I'll report back, or you should have Mark Thompson here, because he'll have the actual information. That's the CEO of my company.
You talked about the importance of objectivity and verification and sort of the basic principles of the field. But it also is important, it's a principle for CNN and a lot of news organizations, to give audiences a chance to hear a range of perspectives and voices. How do you navigate the need to bring that range of perspective with the constant, you can't be amplifying views that have crossed a certain line when it comes to faithfulness to facts, or where is the line between advocacy and propaganda, or between differences of opinion and arguments over that is just not true, when you are trying to create a rich, valuable, diverse conversation on an important topic?
So I think when you're talking about like an actual conversation, like you have people at a desk and talking to each other who disagree, they can sometimes do it for each other. The moderator comes in. I think it is our job to say, when a Democrat says something that is just not factually correct, if the conservative doesn't do it, or maybe it is just me, it depends on the moment and the time and the conversation, to say, no, that's not really right, and same with the conservative. When I'm doing an interview with a newsmaker, then it is totally incumbent on me to correct the record for the viewers, to say, no, that's not right, and either to challenge them depending on time or depending on how far down a rabbit hole I want to go, or to say not right and then pivot and move on. And it's a judgment call. Facts are not subjective, but the way to handle it is subjective, and there's so many factors that go into it. And it's really hard.
You're having to do that in real time.
In real time.
And you have to be absolutely sure that you're right.
Correct.
In correcting something that you think is wrong.
Correct. So there's a lot of prep that goes in. I mean, I have like papers at the desk because we try to anticipate what the person we're interviewing is going to say about any given question that we're posing, and just to have, a few bullet points of facts at the ready. And there's some things that you just know, but it's dangerous to just know.
There's probably nothing for which you prepared more.
Here we go.
Than a certain presidential debate, changed history. Were you in any way prepared for what happened?
No, we prepared for everything except that.
So what was
honestly? Everything except that.
Just a reminder, Dana and Jake Tapper moderated June 27th?
2024. 9 p.m., but who remembers?
And how soon did you know that that debate was not going to go the...
Pretty soon. Pretty soon. I mean, like the first answer, pretty soon. And then...
Do you have producers in your ear giving real-time calling plays?
Well, let me just back up. Let me back up and just kind of tell the story. And sorry, because you guys probably have heard versions of this like a million times. But one of the many reasons this was a unique event was because the Biden campaign, and they were the ones who proposed doing this very early in the election season and the election cycle. What they wanted was for the microphones when each candidate was talking, for the other candidate's microphone to be turned off. So we did so much prep trying to figure out the technical part of it, like when that happens, and when the idea was probably, this is what the Biden people were thinking, that Biden would be talking and Trump would be talking over him, because that's what happened in the Chris Wallace debate in 2020. And it just became untenable. So the Biden campaign was trying to avoid that. And so we were literally practicing like with the microphones in the studio. Oh, also there was no audience. They didn't want an audience. So it was just the four of us and a couple of camera people. And so our biggest, in addition to the substance, which was the most important, our biggest challenge, we thought, was going to be how do we keep focused when Biden is like chirping and chiming in when Trump is talking, and we can hear it, but the audience can't really hear it because the microphone is turned off. But can they hear it a little bit because they're so close? That we spent so much time focused on that. And this was not part of the plan at all. We didn't anticipate that this would be a problem, that the President of the United States would just, just kind of melt down during the event. And so during the event, what we tend to do when we do debates is we also practice managing the time, because they always go over their time. They have time clocks and they always go over, and we practice saying thank you and you're done with your time and moving on. But after a certain point, we realized that the President Biden, wasn't using his time. And so we were like, okay, we were going to the stuff that we'd put in the back that we weren't going to use. We were pulling it up. And at a certain point, I said, Mr. President, you still have another 37 seconds if you want to use it. And again, those are things that we did not plan for at all.
Words that have never been spoken in a
Never. And you could see at a certain point, Trump was looking at him like, oh my God, all these things that we're saying, like, it's actually happening. Like, nobody really believed all of the stuff that they were saying because it was so outlandish. And you could almost see him kind of taking his foot off the gas a little bit in real time. So, that was an experience. And so, and Jake put this in his book, so I can say this publicly now, but the other answer to your question is yes, the producers were like mostly trying to manage. They weren't analyzing or reacting to that. But after President Biden said, I killed Medicare, or whatever he said in the first answer, I wrote on a piece of paper, and I wish I saved this, to Jake, he just lost the election. Because we were both like, oh my gosh.
So we have 2 minutes left before I'm going to turn the floor over to all of you. So think about the questions that you want to ask. But if you've been an inspiration to so many journalists, and through a career that has seen the field change so much, the challenges change so much, so that the world you're operating in now is a very different one than the one you entered. If you could parachute into any part of the media ecosystem right now, where would you want to land?
Oh, wow. That's such a good question. You should be a journalist. It's a good question. Where would I want to land? I would want to land in a place, I mean, it's like a cop-out to say kind of where I am, but in a place where I can do the quick digital videos, where I can do in-depth interviews, where I can do, longer form text pieces or shorter, depending on what's needed. I mean, the thing that's really kind of remarkable about the media landscape now is that if you look at the New York Times.com, you'll see these obviously very long, very in-depth, very well reported out text pieces. And then you'll see their reporters kind of doing what we do and just doing video. And then if you look at CNN.com, you see the traditional media, which is us doing video pieces, but then you see a lot of the text pieces. And so I think what's interesting is that, and the Wall Street Journal is the same way. I mean, most of the media outlets right now are a combination of all the things. So I'm not sure if that's really the answer to your question, but I do still think, I'm not saying that legacy media is the place to be for a young person necessarily, but it is a good place to start and to learn because you have access to all the platforms, all the mediums, the media that people are consuming.
Right, you don't have to pick the way you used to be.
You don't have to pick, and then you figure, okay, now I think I like writing, and I have some sources, and I have a little notoriety, I'll go do a Substack. Right. But it's hard to do that when you're just starting out.
Let me invite you to the various microphones if you have a question. Yes, have at it. And please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Louis Russian. I'm from Scotland. And I just wanted to ask you about, at the moment, we're seeing a lot of people turn away from traditional forms of media and going away from cable, going online. And with that, they're turning to a lot of false information and fake news. Mm-hmm. We see this particularly with Elon Musk's Grok, or basically all of Twitter. And Elon Musk and other people have tried to turn themselves into the arbitrators of what is truth or false. With Grok, if it disagrees with him, then he says it's propaganda, and then he's made it to be a propaganda machine. How can young people return to this old kind of traditional media and fact-based reporting when so much false information is given to us every day?
Look, it's really hard. I think the challenge is, and the key is, knowing what you just said. You can be on Twitter or X or whatever it's called now, and you can follow Elon Musk and whoever else the algorithm points you to. But just know that what you're learning is about how an ecosystem is acting or reacting, or what they're pushing right now. And you can do the same on Blue Sky. Okay, what are liberals, what's getting them going right now? And that if you're interested in that, it's a good experiment. But it's not the place to get the news because of that. And that's why I do think for all of the disparate media right now, for all of the disruption that's happening with legacy media and traditional media, I do feel confident that the Nancy Gibbs of the world, pick your person at the New York Times or at CNN or the Wall Street Journal, that if you are known to play it straight and have objective facts and have access to people who will give you information that is objective and you know how to craft it in an objective way, then that will break through. People are smart, even though sometimes it's not really that clear when you see the way what's going on online, especially in these social media platforms. But I do think objective journalism is as important, even more important than ever because of what you just described.
Do you feel like you have to be on every platform? How do you manage your own digital presence?
No.
Time
Fun fact,
management?
I'm locked out of X right now. I didn't do anything wrong. Like, something happened with like my password and I literally cannot get back in. And I have to say, it's been kind of nice. I can't tweet, so I don't have the trolls coming. Oh, the trolls are probably coming after me, but I just don't know it. We don't have to. We don't have to be on anything, but I'd like to be, just to see what I just described. Like, where are the different factions?
But are you a
of
lurker?
society.
Are you posting regularly?
I'm mostly a lurker. If I post something, it's just like an interview. Like, here's a clip from my interview with George Santos after he got out of jail.
About
No, I'm not an opiner. Definitely not.
right.
Yeah.
That was likely the case. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Artemis Huang, and I'm a Master in Public Policy student here at the Kennedy School. Previously, I've worked in like 5 local outlets here in Massachusetts, and like something that I observed like on a regional level is that content, including articles and videos that are more opinionized, would generate like more traction for the audience. And I was wondering if this observation is seen on the national level, and if yes, like what is your take on balancing viewership and objective, like factual reporting?
Well, I think that you can be objective and compelling at the same time. And that's really the secret sauce to try to break through in this environment. It ain't easy. It's really hard. But yeah, if somebody is has a point of view and has an opinion and expresses that opinion in a very animated way, being diplomatic intentionally, of course that's going to get more views or more clicks. But our challenge, people like me, who that's not my jam. I don't do opinion, and like I said, I don't do any of that online except just pushing out whatever stories that I've done, is to make you want to watch it. And it didn't used to be like that. It used to be the who, what, where, when, why, just the facts, give me the lead. And the facts are important, but if you want people to consume the information that you're reporting on and that you're getting out there, you've got to make it a lot more compelling than we used to. Right. And it's easier with the visual medium because we can do it with pictures and with video and with sound bites. And you can do it creatively, but it's always hard to compete with loud, opinionated voices.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Hussam. I'm a first year at the college. I'm studying government at the moment. First and foremost, thank you so much for being here. It's kind of surreal to see you in person. You've always been an inspiration to me, and I'm sure many others in the room. I suppose my question was sort of building off of what you just denoted about objectivity and remaining as impartial as you possibly can. When I first watched that presidential debate, I thought a myriad of things, but mainly I think I noticed some sort of a shift in not only the way that you approached the questions, but also in the general demeanor and the overall tension in the room. And I thought just now, instead of speculating on what that might be, I could just ask you, from your first-person primary perspective, kind of when you are faced with a situation like that in journalism, where it is completely out of left field and in no way, shape, or form were you expecting anything of that nature to have occurred, how do you implement a sort of fail-safe mechanism in the moment? And building off of that, are there remedies that you or the organization you're a part of more broadly that are instituted afterward to sort of level out the situation? And how objective and impartial can you really be on that front?
I think in that situation, what we do is we provide the forum and the journalism and the questions that we believe are the most important to the electorate at that point. But the way that the candidates act and react, there's not a lot of lesson learned there. I mean, not for us. But how we manage it is just trying to stay as calm as possible, which isn't always that easy. But with something like a debate, it's a lot of preparation and a lot of really smart people who are getting things together ahead of time and then, in the production truck during the actual event. But I think that's obviously sort of the highest stakes example. There are more run-of-the-mill examples that happen, every single day where we're thrown a curveball and you just kind of got to go with it, which is what makes our job exciting, because it's
Never the same 2 days.
never the same, almost never boring, and it is why having experience matters. Doesn't mean having experience is going to make you do the right thing or do well, but it gives you, I think for me, just knowing how I felt when I didn't have as much experience when I first started and how I feel now, it's very different. Because I have more confidence because I've seen a lot and I've done a lot. So get old.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dana. Dhruv here from Harvard Business School.
Hi.
First of all, we're a CNN family and have been, my whole life I've been watching CNN, Singapore, London, where I'm now based before I moved to HBS. It seems as if a lot of what we need is dignity, decorum, respect. And I remember watching CNN when I started in Singapore. It was just so compelling because I could sit there for hours on end and just feel like I was in the room with people who were having an adult conversation. That seems to be sort of fading away. I'm wondering, having been in the business a while, how you think we keep that decorum, we keep that civility as a core value that kids grow up with, especially the teenagers now coming up, as I think that's going to be the key to this product surviving, and journalists like yourself, that quality also surviving. Because journalism will survive, but the quality is not guaranteed.
I think that's an existential question that is an important one far beyond CNN or other mainstream outlets. I mean, I think that because people now who are native to social media platforms, it's so the opposite of civil. I mean, it's so ugly and so vicious that there's almost no room for a civilized debate, the kind of civilized debate that was supposed to be kind of the cornerstone of this democracy. That it's my concern, and I don't think that's a problem for people who attend this university, but my concern is that young people don't know how to do that anymore. Because if they live online, they live in their ecosystems, and if they raise their hand or if they speak out of turn of whatever is expected of them, depending on where their ideal is, then they get slapped back. And I worry about the ramifications of that because they don't speak up or speak out. I mean, I was at a table, I won't give too much away, but at a table with a lot of young people where there was a robust discussion about current events, which was super normal. You would not even remotely think it was antagonistic. And I could see these were sort of college students. I could see them recoiling and looking physically uncomfortable because they don't know how to deal with that. Because if there's any kind of disagreement or contrarian point of view where they live, which is online, it's a horrible situation. And they get burned and attacked and everything else. And it's such a shame. So maybe you can finish business school and figure out an algorithm to counter all the other algorithms so that we don't have that anymore. Thank you.
We have time for one more, so.
Hi. In that case, I'll keep it brief. Thank you so much, obviously, for being here. I'm Michael Isayan. I'm also a freshman at the college from LA. Obviously, you outlined a couple problems, challenges that traditional journalism is facing, the switching from traditional cable and so on and so forth, the shift toward the perceived authenticity of podcasts and so on and so forth. How would you respond to, I guess, one of the other undercurrents that's pushing people away, which is this perception that there's a distrust of the existing sources, the moniker of fake news and the like. What can be done, if anything at all, to sort of bring those people back into the fold, to rebuild the trust that some of which has been lost, or is it sort of just impossible to do while continuing to maintain standards of reporting and integrity and truth?
I mean, you just hit on such a fundamental challenge that we have, and I don't have an easy answer, or really an answer at all, other than just trying to keep doing what I'm doing, and hopefully it's not a tree falling in a forest situation. But you're right, there has been such an erosion of trust in all institutions for various reasons. Government, media, I mean, it doesn't help when you're being called the enemy of the people, and universities, I mean, it goes on and on and on. And it's intentional, it's strategic, and in some ways it's natural, and depending on who or what it is, it's maybe overdue. And so, but just from my perch in what I try to do, which is as objective journalism as I possibly can, I just try to keep on keeping on and try to get it out there as well as I can, and in a compelling way as much as I can, so that it breaks through. And I don't know, maybe it's naive to think that doing that as much as I can will matter somewhere to someone somehow, but I don't really see an alternative.
Anna, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts.
Thank you. Sorry I was late. Thank you for your patience. Thank you.